I think the best outcomes come when you think it through for yourself and decide for yourself. And I don't think people spend enough time deciding. For example, we run on these 4-year cycles. In Silicon Valley, you go join a startup, you vest your stock over 4 years. That's the standard.
Okay.
In college, you go for 4 years. High school, you go for 4 years. Some things take longer. You have children, they hit puberty 9 years later. That's like a 9-year cycle until that relationship changes. But we're used to these fairly long cycles, multi-year cycles in which we are committed to things. You go to law school, 4 or 5 year cycle. You go be a lawyer, 40-year cycle. These are very long cycles. The amount of time we spend deciding what to do and who to do it with, very short, very, very short, right? We spend, 3 months deciding, 1 month deciding on a job where we're going to be for 10 years or 5 years. And because a lot of discovery is path dependent, where the next thing you find on the path is dependent on where you were on the previous path, you sort of start going down this vector that is a very long distance. People decide frivolously which city to live in, and that's going to decide who their friends are, what their jobs are, their opportunity, their weather, their food supply, their air supply, quality of life. It's such an important decision, but people spend so little time thinking it through. I would argue that if you're making a 4-year decision, spend a year thinking it through, like really thinking it through.
25% of the time.
Yeah, exactly. There's the secretary theorem. I don't know if you know that one.
Is that
computer science.
After you've done this many people, pick
Correct.
the best one of the next however many?
That's right. Yeah, the secretary theorem is this computer science professor is trying to figure out how much time he should spend interviewing secretaries and then how long to keep the secretary. So let's say he's going to have a secretary for 10 years. Does he keep searching for, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 1 month, 2 months? What is the optimal time? And it turns out that the optimal time is somewhere around a third. About a third of the way through, you take the best person you've worked with and try to find someone that good or better. Mm-hmm. So by the time you've gone about a third of the way through, you have seen enough that you now have a sense of what the bar is. Mm-hmm. And then anybody who meets or exceeds that bar is good enough. Mm-hmm. And this applies to dating, this applies to jobs and careers, this applies generally. But the interesting thing about the secretary theorem is that it's actually not time-based. It's not based on 1/3 of the time. It's iteration-based.
The number of candidates.
The number of shots you took on goal.
Yeah.
That's right. So you want to have lots and lots of iterations. So in that sense,
you need to bail out quickly and you need to be decisive quickly.
That's right.
You need to take opportunities quickly and bail out quickly.
Correct. Like if you go back and you look through failed relationships, probably the biggest regret will be staying in the relationship after you knew it was over.
Yeah.
Exactly. You should have left sooner. The moment you knew it wasn't going to work out, you should have moved on. So in that sense, I think Malcolm Gladwell popularized this idea of 10,000 hours to mastery. I would say it's actually 10,000 iterations to mastery. It's not actually 10,000. It's some unknown number, but it's about the number of iterations that drives a learning curve. And iteration is not repetition. Repetition is a different thing. Repeating is doing the same thing over and over. Iteration is modifying it with a learning and then doing another version of it. So that's error correction. So if you get 10,000 error corrections in anything, you will be an expert at it.
Everyone can be rich?
Everyone can be rich. And let me give you a thought exercise. Okay. Imagine if tomorrow we could wave a wand and everybody was trained as a scientist or an engineer. Everybody. Even if you weren't very good, you had enough understanding of computers, you could write some code, you could build some hardware. And don't tell me people can't do it, because they can. That's just the tyranny of soft expectations. That's just you looking down on somebody else. They can do it. They just have to be educated. Now, if they're educated all as hardware, software engineers, scientists, biologists, technicians, hard sciences, not the social sciences, we would all be done within 5 years. Robots would be doing everything from cleaning toilets to cooking food to flying airplanes to driving Ubers. And what would we be doing? We would be doing all creative jobs to entertain each other and researching science and technology. We would have wonderful lives. So it is really just a question of education, nothing else.
Is this a scale issue, though? I mean, you're talking about it as if this would work with 300 million people.
It'll work with 10 billion people. It'll work with a spacefaring race with 100 trillion people.
We have the resources. We have the ability.
The universe is infinite resources. You build have you heard of a Dyson sphere? Mm-hmm. You build a Dyson sphere on a star and you gather all its energy like that. There's so much energy out there. One asteroid's got all the minerals that we need. One sun, one solar system has got all the power we will need for a long, long time. We can extract it out of nuclear fusion. We're not that far from those kinds of technologies working. It's just a question of guts and interest. Like we should be building nuclear fusion test plants on the moon. The moon should be littered with them. It's no downside. when I was young, my dad wasn't around much. He immigrated to the US before the rest of us did, and it took 4 years where he could pull us there, and then my parents went through divorce and so on. So one good thing was I never had anybody telling me what to do, ever. And I had to figure everything out for myself. And I think that helps a lot. It makes you very high agency. I also, nobody in my, like my aunts and my mom, they loved us to death, but there was nobody saying, this is right, that's wrong, do it this way, don't do it that way. So you figure it out for yourself. And it started with reading, but eventually it just goes to thinking. But I don't think there's anything special. I think deep down, everybody wants to understand things, right? Everybody wants to learn. Everyone's curious. All children are curious. Any young child, they'll be asking questions all day long. And I think the trick is just don't stop asking questions and keep asking questions until you can answer something to your own satisfaction. Maybe I had the luxury of the time to read. You know, that's helpful because it helps answer questions when you're younger. At least some reading. Too much reading or reading the wrong things can be bad too, right? Because you can stuff your head with the wrong things. I guess for decades, I did not feel like I was that smart, because what would happen is I would talk to somebody and they'd say, well, there's this and that, and there's this, and they would just start using big terms and big words and defining huge things. And it took me a long time to figure out they didn't know what they were talking about. If someone's using a lot of big words, you know, it's the mark of a charlatan to explain simple things in a complex way. And it's a mark of a genius, like Richard Feynman, to explain complicated things in simple ways. The smartest people actually understand what they're talking about, so they can explain it in plain English. They don't need to resort to abstractions. They don't need to impress. And a lot of times with abstractions are leaky. You poke at them and it doesn't quite map, or it doesn't mean what they think it means. I'd rather like stick, and I'm a failed physicist. I wanted to be a physicist. So, and my math wasn't good enough. Plus I wanted to make money, so it didn't work out. But I was surrounded by a lot of physicists and I read a lot of physics. And so I felt dumb compared to the other physicists. And so you're not going to trick a physicist. You're not going to walk in and start talking physics and then something like you say something that's wrong. They're going to call you on it. Physics is very rigorous. And same thing with computer science, which I did end up studying, is the code has to compile. The code has to run. The code has to work. You can't trick the machine using words. And so I think having a grounding in scientific disciplines around scientific people forces you to be rigorous and humble about your actual sphere of knowledge. You can't bluff people. Systems in which you get feedback, like real feedback, free markets and nature, right? You can't trick nature. I can't lie to nature, and I can't trick free markets or I'll end up broke. So these systems give you very good feedback and they force you into being rigorous. But it's very easy to trick people. So if you're in politics, if you're in law, if you're in journalism, if you're in media, if you're just, you know, BSing with your friends, it's very easy to trick people. And then you get social rewards, you don't get the negative feedback, and that gets baked into your personality, your identity, your way of thinking. So I think I was fortunate enough to be scientifically, to get scientific feedback and to be pushed back upon through science and scientific people. I also grew up in a tough environment, so it was a no BS environment. You had to be correct. So, you know, when you're trying to survive, you have to be correct. When you have an abundance of resources and things are easy, you don't have to be right, because there's cushions everywhere in the environment for you. So maybe I was forged that way. But like I said, I don't introspect much. It doesn't really matter to me. It's ancient history. All that matters is here, because this is all there is.